True power lies in what's only perceived as being true, rather than what actually is true. This is greatly proven by examining the story of Adam and Eve. No woman has ever come from the rib of a man, but every man has come from the wombs of a woman. And the fact is that the oldest human remains found has been that of an African woman. She was millions of years older than the fictional biblical timeline of when Adam and Eve were supposedly created. However, because millions of people believes that the story of Adam and Eve is true, it has been used to successfully subjugate women. Millions believe that that women came after men at the request of a man to be a helpmate of a man, therefore that is inherently subordinate to a man. Therefore, the story assigns women to a false subordinate status beneath men. And by depicting Adam and Eve as being Caucasians, it has successfully placed Caucasians as being at the beginning and at the top of the human family tree. Therefore, the story of Adam and Eve actually fulfills the white male's proclivity for sexism and racism. Because people function based upon their perception of what's true, the white male ruling elites have always created false narratives that shape the public perceptions in ways that benefits themselves, and then imposes those falsehoods upon the public as being factual. It's a social science that they hope that the public at large never learns. This is why those of us who know the truth must teach. African proverb. The public at large functions based upon the perception of what's true rather than what actually is true. This is why white social scientist says that perception is more important than reality for controlling people and for steering a society towards an applied objective. Therefore, as a means of maintaining the white population's elevated social status over its black population, the narratives fed to the public have been deliberately distorted to conceal the true reality that the largest recipient of welfare, the largest benefactors of affirmative action and DEI programs, and the group that commits most violent crimes are in fact Caucasians. And in spite of cultural traumas wrought by the injustices of slavery and white racism, most inventions that have revolutionized the world were either invented by black people or were directly inspired by earlier inventions made by black people. Your perception is a white deception. The white society created the perception that most revolutionizing inventions were created by themselves by falsely giving their racial group credit for most inventions that were actually made by black people. The following are a few examples of the whitewashing practice. White governed schools miseducates us to believe that Thomas Edison, a white inventor, is responsible for lighting up the world. But the true fact is that after Edison patented his light bulb, no companies purchased it nor mass produced it. This is because it was deemed not efficient enough. It lit very dimly and only lasted a few minutes. The inventor whose light bulb was purchased by the U.S. Electric Company in 1881, then mass produced, and that was dispatched around the world to oversee its installation, was actually in fact an African American named Lewis Latimer. Therefore, in reality, it was actually a black man that lit up the entire world. Lewis Latimer literally wrote the book on electric lighting, and he holds the patent for the first electric lamp. Lewis Latimer also wrote the blueprint plans for Graham Bell's telephone. The white society has also miseducated us to believe that the Wright brothers are responsible for building the first aircraft in 1909. However, the hidden fact is that before the Wright brothers flew their aircraft in 1909, a black man named Charles F. Page had already invented, patented, and flown an aircraft 3 years earlier in 1906. The The white society has also miseducated us by teaching us that Henry Ford invented the first automobile. However, it was actually an African American inventor named Charles Richard Patterson that built the first automobile. The C.R. Patterson and Sons Company started out as a carriage building firm in 1873. He and his sons converted the company from a carriage business to an automobile manufacturer. They started making automobiles before Henry Ford and sold the first one for $850. It had a 4-cylinder Continental engine. C.R. Patterson's automobiles were considered more sophisticated. However, C.R. Patterson and Sons were forced out of business by Henry Ford in 1939. It's by deliberate design that most people are unaware of these historical facts. These facts have been deliberately expunged from the public record and omitted from our whitewashed history books. This practice of distorting facts to falsely give whites credits for most inventions that were actually invented by black people has been repeated many times throughout history. The history we've been taught has been whitewashed. The hidden reality is that without black people, there would exist no motors, no automobiles, no airplanes, no helicopters. Without black people, we would not have skyscrapers. We only have skyscrapers because black people invented the elevator, the fire extinguisher, the fire escape ladder, air conditioning, and heating systems, which are essential in order for people to live or work within skyscrapers. Without black people, there would exist no internet, no cell phones. We wouldn't have cameras and microphones on our cell phones if not for black people. We wouldn't have the accurate weather forecasting system. We wouldn't have the cataract laser removal scope. There would be no emails, no GPS, no hearing aids, no touch-tone phones, no caller ID, no home surveillance security system, no home game cartridges, no steam engines, no traffic lights. Without black people, there would exist no refrigerators, no refrigerated trucks, therefore no ice cream trucks, no blood banks, no dry cleaning, no lawnmowers, no doorknobs, no 3D movies, etc., etc. Through the white society's monopoly over information that are fed into our society, the white oppressors have manipulated millions to believe that most inventions come from the minds of Caucasians and to perceive black people as being the leeches of society that haven't invented much throughout history. But it's an elaborate white deception. But the truth is that it's the exact opposite from what they've manipulated millions to believe. Black people have in fact enriched nearly every aspect of the lives of every person on this planet through our many inventions. But it's a truth that they conceal to maintain their social dominance over black people. The true reality is much different than the false narrative that they've embedded into the collective minds of the masses. It's actually the genius minds of black people that moves the world forward. However, in order for black inventors to get their inventions made, mass produced, they have no options than to go before white companies. These white companies acquires the rights to these inventions and then places white faces in front of the inventions. Furthermore, the Patent Office has also been used to steal intellectual property rights from black inventors. These two scenarios literally allows the white society to continue exploiting the intellectual genius minds of black people while maintaining the perception that most inventions are coming from Caucasians, and our society functions on that perception to the benefit of the white society. White propagandists have fed lots of false white exalting and false black marginalizing narratives to the public. In doing so, they created a false perception of reality that has falsely bolstered the collective self-image and collective self-esteem of the white masses at the expense of the collective self-image and collective self-esteem of the black masses. White historians justify this unethical practice of whitewashing all facts as being merely the spoils of war, thus saying that it's customary for conquerors to distort facts and rewrite history to favor themselves. However, the true reason it's being done is much more self-serving of the white society. According to white social scientists, In order for a dominant group to maintain its position of social dominance within a society, that the narratives fed into the society must endorse the dominant group's position of social dominance. This means that the information fed into the society about the dominant group must exalt the dominant group above its subordinate populations. Therefore, the history we've been taught has been whitewashed to make Caucasians appear more significant and more relevant throughout history than they truly in fact were. Doing so is necessary to provide the white society with a false historical platform that endorses their current position of social dominance. Your perception of reality is an elaborate white deception. Those of us who are telling you the truth are trying to free you from a mental prison you don't even know you're trapped within. It's the real matrix. The real matrix is not a computer simulation. It's not a movie. Nor does it have anything to do with a red pill. The real matrix is an enormous illusionary truth effect that creates and sustains a false perception of reality that aids the white society in maintaining its position of social dominance. The illusory truth effect is when people have been made to believe that false information is true because of being constantly subjected to the false information. And then they then begin functioning based upon the false information instead of the true reality. This is what white social scientists have done. The African slaves of the 21st century are those who cannot elevate their minds above a biblical fairy tale and a silly slave syndrome myth, and learn instead of the many hidden social sciences that a white society deploys for maintaining its social dominance and for mentally enslaving the black masses. It's time to wake up to our true reality. One love and peace.